Thank you, ResellerClub, for having me over once again. It was a pleasure speaking to the audience in the event in Bangalore last year, and I was thrilled to be able to present to you once again in Mumbai. So thanks once again for having me. Today, I would like to touch upon a very interesting topic, which is pretty close to my heart. And we're going to talk about, again, something similar we have been hearing for the last few hours during the afternoon. About audiences. We're going to try and understand the behavior of a specific audience whom we know a little less of. For the past few decades, we have been chasing around trying to understand the behavior and the model of our audiences, which cater to particularly millennials. So we know very much about the millennial generation and what really excites them. What are the type of experiences we can create to entice them? But what about the next and upcoming generation who's not present amidst us today? We're going to talk about them today, learn a little bit more about what really excites them in terms of their behavior traits, what are the things that really get their attention, what are a few things that we can learn in order to create experiences for them better, and maybe have some questions from you by the end of it so that I can try and answer those. So without further ado, I would like to jump into the topic. So the topic is titled today, Designing for the Generation Z of India. Now, before we jump into the Generation Z, we would like to look at some stats. So these are just raw stats out of the internet, but these paint a clear picture of the humongous amount of potential that lies out there for us to tap onto. We are looking at a sizable amount of the youthful generation that's coming up, scaling up till 2019, 2020, who has a potential buying capacity, which you can see over here. But all this is sitting atop a time bomb. And it is tend to go off in 8 seconds. 8 seconds is the average attention span this generation has over the internet. Now, this is what we're trying to understand today. These are certain traits that we're going to talk about, deep dive into, and understand what type of experiences out there are already trying to make a great impact, trying to grab their attention. To try and define Generation Z, they are the generation who is just getting out of their educational systems, getting ready to be part of the larger workforce. So they might be placed somewhere between the 16 to 24-year-olds. The interesting part about them is that they're not actively involved within all the functions and all the discussions that we have on our daily day-to-day basis, because this is more to do with corporate and more to do with the corporate generation, which has been comprised of millennials mostly. But what this gives us an opportunity is to understand the generation that is coming up into the workforce and try to stay ahead of the game, try to experience what they feel like, what are their aspirations and motivations. And also, in order to do that, we have to understand what are few examples that can lead us in a better way, creating experiences for the future already. Let's start with few of the behavior traits of this of this generation that we speak of. From specific examples, we're going to deep dive into those and see what the different products are trying to do in that segment. Savviness is definitely a key feature. So this is a behavior trait that this generation pertains because they were born into technology. This is a generation when they were kids, they were already pinching and swiping through iPads, which we couldn't believe ourselves doing at that particular age. So we have to keep that in mind and understand that they are already tech savvy because they're born into the technology we had to adapt. They're very anxious. As we saw earlier, with a mere attention span of 8 seconds, they need everything done just like that. They can't wait. They cannot actually be told that there is something better coming up because they know already there is something else that they could go instead of waiting for this experience to be completed. They're very much aware of the different options that they have around themselves. Because of today's technological expanse, the number of products and experiences which are presented to this generation are numerous. So if they are not satisfied with one experience, they would quickly jump into another and try to gain that same experience from that product. Yes, they are selective. They are much more aware about the sensitivity of internet privacy more than any other generation which came before. So they know what is private, what can be shared, what cannot be shared. Keeping these specific traits in mind, let's deep dive into a few examples and see how they are being catered through these popular products and experiences which are constantly tapping onto this new generation Z. One of the few first examples that we can always come up with is video content. Now, it's no surprise that recently there has been a surge in the amount of video content consumption. Give it just the Instagram TV, the number of video content coming up on Facebook, or even popular products like TikTok video. So this product has definitely tried to tap onto the aspect of these instantly gratified generation where they can create and consume content on the go. They don't have to sit somewhere, they don't have to be before a computer system to be able to consume or create such content. So they're doing it on the fly. Brands are also using this content platform to reach out to this audience, which otherwise they had to rely on popular medium like TV. So now the whole ad system has moved from TV to targeted videos, which are through mobile devices. AR features. Again, this is something very interesting which has come up and taken by storm this generation. Taking examples of Snapchat. Yes. Sorry, good question. Let me explain that to you. It's augmented reality. So what it does is it uses typically the camera view to take a picture of yourself and try to place things around in that view. So to give you an example, Instagram tried augmented videos where you could take a picture or live video of yourself and on top of your head you could place a different crown. So this is a popular example of AR feature. Apple also recently introduced this feature on their latest iPhones. Because of this feature, again, popular games have seen a constant rise within this generation. Say, for example, Pokemon Go was pretty famous because it allowed their users to actually look out in the real world and find treasures, which they would actually use to go walk around, which otherwise they weren't doing. Contrary to popular app or product usages, mostly the generation was sitting inside a room or on their table or on their chair and just trying to consume information, whereas this allowed a feature for them to be part of the real world while being immersed into a different world altogether. And this is yet another example of how technology is being used to onboard and engage this generation of users without actually having to take extra time from their space. So this is a great example of how it has enabled them to be part of the real world without demanding extra time or investment from them. Another example, if we can talk about where experiences are designed keeping the user at the center of it, is popularly Netflix. So most of you might have already used Netflix. You understand how they create different profiles and try to cater the content around that profile only. The more you consume the content there, the stronger the suggestions get. Now, this is a popular example of how these popular products are trying to create experiences encircling a particular user, encircling a behavior that they already are showing. Form and function. So this example is from a popular product called Headspace. I don't know if most of you might have used it already, but it's a popular product which is used for meditation. You could just open this app and it would give you different modules to consume, help you meditate, also learn a thing or two in the process. And what it has employed particularly is just great design. It has employed vibrant colors to actually cater to the actual need of what they're trying to portray, the idea of being helpful while being lively. They also have clear communication and clear actions. Everything that you need to take as an action is visible out there because it takes into account the fact that this generation doesn't have a lot of time to waste around what they want to get done. So while trying to give them a great experience to be proud of, they're also trying to give them the right potential to do whatever they actually came here to do. Personal nudge is, again, something that few popular brands are doing too well. And this is an example from Myntra, as you notice, where they actually try and call out the person by their own name. So this is, again, a very interesting feature that is being tried out where they're trying to tap onto the personal character of the audience. Now, this generation that we talk about really take pride in being addressed directly or personally, rather than being, say, for example, addressed like just another human being or just another person or being generic in that sense. So whenever we try and address this generation through the experiences that we create, we can always try and be a little more personal, the same way that we could try and be personal while speaking to another person in real life. So they don't expect these technologies to be part computer, but part human. So it's the same way they represent the character of a person, the same way they expect it to interact with them and be familiar. So rather than just sending a notification which says, hey, we just got a great deal for you, sending the same notification which says, hey, XYZ or whoever your name is, there's a great deal for you. And it suddenly seems more personalized, it suddenly seems more contextual, and then they regard it more than any generic upsell or any generic notification. Here's another example of an ad. So we always come up with these kind of ads whenever we are trying to visit a website or use an app, and suddenly something just pops up in the face. Now, popular stats have led to the results that they lead to a lot of drop-off just because they are intrusive, and more so with the upcoming generation. They take it as an offense when something really obstructs the experience they are trying to expect out of a product or a website or an app, whereas somebody else tries to sell them something in their face. So what is a better way of selling something without having to create such a bitter experience for those? It can be more contextual, it can be more subtle, and definitely it shouldn't be something that really obstructs whatever they were trying to do. In this case, while they were trying to shop for a particular product, they were bombarded by a full-scale interstitial, which wasn't really helping. But here, they might have something more relevant, which could be sold without obstructing the real experience. Another quick example of instant gratification while being catered through technology are AMP pages. So AMP are accelerated mobile pages that Google had enabled. These are basically just web pages on a diet. They try and help pages load faster than traditional pages. They are also ranked higher in Google searches because they are following certain standards that are specified by Google. Now, what they help is they have bare minimum information being updated where somebody searching for anything on that content can instantly find the results through Google search without having to wait for a longer time. So the potential here is that they can open up rudimentary websites with the basic information required while stripping down the unnecessary CSS and everything in terms of style, but still give them the rightful experience what they were trying to achieve, here in this case, just to shop. So accelerated mobile pages again tie back to the whole instance of giving an instant gratification without having to rely on the fact that there are heavier websites to be loaded or more results to be shown, but just give the audience an experience right then and there so that they can become more aware of what this product is trying to sell. Is this something that I should spend more time on? Same thing goes for progressive web apps or PWA, which is again something popularized by Google recently. They're the same thing, but these are apps on a diet. They have the capabilities of showing all the features of a particular app while still being a web page, a mobile web page. Now, this has, again, the potential of opening up user's browser without having to install an app, which requires a significant friction and a lot of time to go forward and then download a particular app and then use it. So this, again, could be a really, really interesting hook to just let those consumers know what it is out there, what they can really engage with. Is there some potential? Are the USPs good enough for their immediate need? And then again, progress further into deep dive into the real experience, which is very, very similar to the actual app. This is an interesting example of how Google Plus used to onboard users a few years back. Now, sadly, Google Plus is shutting down, but a few years back, when somebody tried to access Google Plus through mobile web, they would force them to download the app instead, which wasn't a great experience. I mean, like, who would like to go back to, again, download an app just to figure out it doesn't really make sense? So Google themselves tried to put in the specific need and rules saying that every website needs to onboard the user the same way, regardless of where they're coming from. So later on, Google actually enabled the mobile website for Google Plus because they weren't following their own guidelines. But the real fact behind this is the user can come from anywhere. They don't have the time, they don't have the patience to actually go forward and install the whole app, see how it is, and then figure out if they really want to stick with the experience. So why not onboard them from wherever they're coming from? This, again, is one of the features that Google Plus has employed. And after that, a lot of other brands have come up with the equal mobile experiences. And that is evident. Of course, recently, a lot of popular websites like Amazon, Flipkart, even Uber have come up with their mobile experiences just to make sure the onboarding is seamless and it doesn't really depend on an app. A lot of times, we have come across different products or experiences where there are so many different instructions to follow through even before we start deep diving into the experience. It kind of tires us out. And this can be a heavy patronizing factor for this upcoming generation because they don't really appreciate it. They don't really appreciate being patronized and told this has to be done after that. Rather, they enjoy it much more when they are allowed to deep dive into the information, deep dive into the experience, and learn things as they explore it. So they really appreciate slower learning curves. They don't appreciate when somebody tries to patronize them and say, hey, don't do this, why don't you try that? The same thing can be applied in the experiences that we create for this generation, where this example, as you can see, forces a user to first time come and do small gestures like swipe and drag and drop, which could be pretty much simple for this generation who have been doing it ever since they were babies. Rather, this is again an example from Headspace where it allows them to deep dive into the experience while still telling them, onboarding them slowly, steadily, that this is what happens once you do this and this is the next thing that you could do for yourself and see how it pans out. So again, one key aspect about this generation is that they like experiences when they are in a assistive mode rather than a mode where they're trying to teach something new, assuming that they don't know anything. A great example of navigation feature could be Instagram. And we have talked about Instagram today a lot. But why this particular product is so popular is just because of the fact how clean and simple the navigation still is over the years. Over these years, Instagram has added a lot of many interesting features to its baggage, but it has still kept the structure or the navigation intact and something that really is relatable to the mental model that users have. So the key aspect here is to add on to different features, but also make sure that the structure in itself stays simple enough for everybody to relate to and also come back to and feel comfortable while using. We have talked about how typing on a mobile device is really a pain. Filling up longer forms or even to fill up one field trying to search for something feels like a pain at times. One of the ways this is being catered to in this example is by showing relevant or suggestive results even before typing something on. So this is an example where few suggestive examples are shown, which could be popular results or which could be results suggested through the historical data of the user who has already come on board this platform before. This again helps them try to look for something without having to type a lot. A similar kind of an example would be the use of contextual filters. So this is one example from Airbnb where they try and use filters which in itself show a feedback of results. In this case, the price range and also the available inventory within this price range, which otherwise had to be employed while applied on a different screen, and then they go back and see the results coming up on a separate screen altogether. Now, this kind of a conjunction of features really helps them build context within the particular screen and make informed decisions without having to wait for a lot of time. One of the last examples here, as you can see, is again something popularly being promoted by Myntra these days. And this is one example where the actual context of character is being taken from an offline experience and put into a digital experience, try to mimic it the same way. So this is an experience where somebody can share what they like with a particular friend within the particular experience itself, and then have a conversation around how they feel this product would look on them. So it's trying to mimic the actual conversation somebody has with their best friend or good friend around something they really want to buy and just get some feedback from them. So rather than having to share it on social media publicly, they have the capability of sharing privately with somebody they feel is relevant to this conversation, and also have necessary information and feedback from them to use. So this is again another example where the character is being tied into the experience, but also the fact that privacy is important has been taken into account. These are few examples that we looked at today, where popular products are trying to do similar things, trying to tap into the behavior of this upcoming generation. We can quickly summarize on few of the aspects that we have looked through, and then understand better where it can be more relevant. And then finally, we can open up to questions, and I can try and answer more questions if you have any. So to quickly summarize, personalization is definitely a key. With the recent rise of technologies like machine learning, it has become really, really important to understand what the particular user wants and trying to deliver exactly that, being contextual in that matter. Product character definitely matters, because while everybody else is trying to create a computer interface and trying to sell something up front, it always gives us an edge being ahead in the curve while having a little character added to that experience so that it feels more human. In not just the way it presents information, but also how it takes information back. And that also takes into account the communication that happens, so that it happens naturally without having the feeling of being communicating to a computer back and forth. Quick and impactful, of course, because this generation doesn't have the time and patience to wait for something to load over and over again, it becomes really, really important to make sure that something just quickly loads in the snap of a second, and it's always convenient to access it from no matter where. So it does matter if this user is being onboarded from the web or from any other platform, to give them the same experience which is consistent as well as coherent. The messaging and the information is key. and to save time and of course make sure that they get the idea of what we are trying to sell or what we are trying to actually present to them is clear and evident in the way it is being presented. So what matters is the design is minimal and what we are trying to sell is clearly evident in whatever we are trying to communicate. Of course, we talked about being non-patronizing in the way we sell design, the way we present certain things to our audience, and this becomes crucial whenever we are trying to communicate something in a way which is less intrusive, so that we make sure that we tell them we understand their privacy, which is first and foremost, and also the fact that we appreciate that they like small learning curves rather than being handheld all the time. They like to be in the center of the experience and have control over it all the way through. To summarize the whole picture of how we are trying to create experience for the upcoming generation, this is just a graphical representation of the population that is there in India, which is the potential youth population, and where we stand in terms of market readiness. To define market readiness, it would be how we are trying to create experiences while keeping in mind the needs and aspirations of the upcoming generation. So this is just a visualization of where we are in terms of the population scale and how far we lack in terms of market readiness compared to other different countries which are in the similar playground. This is definitely not the right picture, but what aspires us to so what matters for us is how do we actually take ourselves from this position to there and make sure that we are already trying to consider the different aspirations and the behavior traits of this generation so that we can help ourselves design for the future, make sure that the upcoming generation doesn't give away the experiences. We don't have to actually invest a lot of time and energy just to make sure that the upcoming generation accepts the experience and also has a great time being part of it. So on this note, I would like to conclude this short speech today and would like to open up to yourselves for any questions that you might have. Thank you.